Graycliff is an interesting story. We went public. We optioned the property in just west of Sudbury in August of 2019. In August of 2020, we went public. And our goal was to basically explore in the shadow of the existing shaft and dramatically expand the size of the mineralization in that area. Since we went public, we've done over 12,000 meters. We have one of the things that sort of sets us apart is we have extensive VG in the drill core, and it's resulted in some spectacular numbers from our drilling. We also have the Baldwin project where we have 1,500 hectares, and it's more of a greenfield site as opposed to Shakespeare. We also have an all-star team with Bruce Durham as our QP and technical advisor, and Don McKinnon Jr. And we have a tight structure. We still only have 32 million shares-ish, and about 25% is owned by insiders and strategic investors. So it's a very good story. Obviously, like everything else, it's been obliterated by the market, but it's an excellent buy at this point. So, as I said, we're about 80 kilometers along the Trans-Canada, and then we drive in a paved road right to site. The original Miller Shaft, or as we call it, the Miller Shaft, named for the prospector, he basically located a quartz vein that had a return 250 ounces per ton. They sank the shaft by hand and mined it for a couple of years. We believe that there is extensive mineralization below that area at surface, and we're continuing to explore for that. So it's a really good geologic setting. We're right on the rim of the Sudbury Basin. So in addition to the gold, which is in stockworks and quartz vein stockworks, there is a series of quite good copper numbers, some nickel. We've even got cobalt on the property in the north. The pits you can see to the northeast of the area of recent drilling, one of those had a 3% copper at surface. So these quartz veins and quartz vein stockworks seem to be fairly extensive on the property. They're associated with the Miller Fault, the large black line going through the property. That's a 250 kilometer Murray Fault. That's a 250-kilometer structure which goes right to Sudbury. One of the things we find interesting, this area where you can see where the Miller Shaft was, is about 300 feet above the road, the paved road. So a lot of the mineralization we've found so far is actually above surface on the top of this cliff. So it makes for quite favorable brownfield conditions. It would be quite simple to extract the mineralization. As I said before, the Airborne geophysics is part of what we've done. We're also looking at opening the number 3 adit, which is about 75 feet above the roadway, and we'll be able to carry out some underground exploration from the number 3 adit. So that's part of what we're looking at for 2023. But the Airborne geophysics gave us a number of really good exploration targets, and 2023 we'll be looking at some of those targets, so I'm pretty excited about that. So when you look at some of the drilling we did in phase 1 to 3, you can see some of these holes. These are enormous numbers, 8.6 grams at a depth of 68. We had 16 grams over 16 meters at 89 meters of depth, and all the way down to hole 22 where we had 46 grams, and then another section just below that of 46 grams, and those two just show that the depth potential and the amount of mineralization that we're finding. We have now expanded this area to almost 150 meters by 150 meters by 300 meters of depth. So there is a lot of gold mineralization. We've got several sections that are in excess of 10 grams over 5 to 10 meters in width. And of course, when you're looking at potentially ramping down to take out some of this ore, That makes it pretty favorable. The other thing that we found, we did, I'm going to go forward here, there we go. In phase 4, we continue to find VG. We continue to expand the width going, this is northeast-southwest, and we've also extended it along the cross-section C in width. But what we're finding is we're continuing to get these high-grade samples, 5 meters of 5 grams, 3 meters of 14 grams. And they're consistent. They're filling it in hole 53. One of the things we like, we had a section of 24 meters with 3 separate anomalous sections that bottomed out about 197 meters in the hole. So it's consistent. There's a lot more places to drill on the property, and we believe there's more of these high-grade zones along strike going northeast-southwest along that 6-kilometer trend that we have. We also did some surface channel sampling to see if the mineralization continued to go to surface as it originally had been found. You can see some of the channel samples here on the right. And 137 grams at surface over almost a meter of channel sampling. Those are good numbers. It's quite exciting for us because it also proved to us that the mineralization on the property does go from surface to over 300 meters. We'll also be doing some stripping in the spring, and we'll be doing more of this channel sampling to find other areas where we should be drilling. As I said briefly, the geophysical survey that we carried out was 488 line kilometers, 100 meter spacing. We did both Shakespeare and Baldwin, which, as you can see, is basically adjoining us to the east. And it's really, you can see some of the size of these anomalies that we were getting, and they're quite significant on Baldwin. So we really want to get in there in 2023 and sink some holes and see what we've got. I believe the area to the northeast that you can see in Shakespeare and Baldwin, which is very close to where Magna Mining has their Shakespeare nickel mine, we believe that there is a lot of potential for nickel and copper in these northeastern anomalies. But we also identified a structural regional deformation zone which coincides with where the Miller shaft is, and we'll be following up with that on other areas of the property. So the geophysics was great. It's going to allow us to do some more field sampling and provide us with new targets for 2023. That's just me looking at some core. It's actually the VG that ran 46 grams. It was pretty easy to see, even though I'm squinting. And the other thing that comes through in this is that there's a lot more work to be done. We're looking at drilling a couple of HQ core holes, which will allow us to do some preliminary metallurgical work. We could have as much as 85% free gold. Certainly the work that was done at surface, we came back with some very significant free gold in the material that was at surface. And we believe, based on the drill core and the way we're seeing the amount of VG we're seeing, that free gold could be quite prevalent in the mineralized zone. As I mentioned with Baldwin, it's really a brownfield site. We picked it up because when we did the historical assessment work or the desktop study, we found that it was primarily explored for uranium. And when they pulled the core, they then laid the core on the ground, ran a scintillometer across it, and if it didn't set off the scintillometer, they never assayed it. And they never assayed anything they did assay. They only assayed for uranium. So we think there's a lot of potential. The drill core descriptions in the assessment reports suggested the same, highly sericitized, folded and faulted quartz veins that we're seeing at Shakespeare. So there's a lot of potential for Baldwin in 2023 as well. The company's pretty straightforward. I've been doing this for 35 years. I am a geologist. I was in the field for a short period and then joined the mining business on Bay Street, and have been running public and private companies for over 30 years. I've got a strong team. My chairman is in Perth. He's got an extensive Australian background, but very, very up to speed on Canadian geology as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we have Bruce Durham and Don McKinnon Jr. as our technical advisors, and they bring two things. They bring extensive experience, and they bring drillers, geophysicists, geologists, and almost all of those individuals are shareholders of the company, and that's something else that I think sets us apart. And it makes a big difference in a market like this. Our all-in drilling costs are very low comparatively, and we were able to secure drill bits last year when other people were having a hard time just finding bits. So it's a real advantage for us. So as I said earlier, capital structure, pretty straightforward, 33 million shares, 43.6 fully diluted. You know, we've done financing as high as 70 cents. Currently we're at 7. I hate this market, but that's what happens. And it makes it an incredibly good buying opportunity for Graycliff. And that is basically our story in a nutshell. So Shakespeare, proven gold. We're finding a lot more. We have potential to find even more at Shakespeare, especially along strike. And Baldwin is a real greenfield site with a huge amount of potential for finding not only gold but also base metals. And obviously that's pretty exciting in this current market. Great team, dedicated to the project and still working flat out, and tight structure with a lot of upside.